A big shout out to the sponsor of this video, VideoBlocks. They are one of the fastest growing stock video libraries with over 2 million videos, and all the clips come with royalty-free agreements, so you can't get copyright claimed. You can get a free 7-day license if you use the link videoblocks.com/YouTube. Check it out. They're super cool people and they have a lot of stuff for aspiring YouTubers like myself. What's up guys? Ozzy here. And in my last video, I built a $260 machine using AMD's Athlon APU series for the purpose of having an upgrade path. In that video specifically, I stated that this computer is ready for a Ryzen series CPU, meaning that you can take out the APU and then you can pop in something like a Ryzen 7 1800X and it would theoretically work just fine. All you need is a video card. Despite having a non-overclocking capable A320 motherboard, having a $30 450 watt power supply, and using a $20 case that isn't the most expandable, I basically stated that you could still upgrade to the flagship AMD CPU and not have any issues. At the same time, I also wanted to test if there was any kind of issues running a 95 watt TDP processor on the lowest chipset that AMD has to offer on the AM4 platform. Now, I've never heard any issues of this, but I also haven't seen anyone do this before, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to tread the waters just a tiny bit. I upgraded the $260 APU gaming computer from my last video and turned it into a, I guess, sleeper gaming computer with an 8-core processor and a GTX 1060. So the processor I chose is the Ryzen 7 1800X, and it is AMD's flagship Ryzen 7 CPU. It has 8 cores and 16 threads with a 3.6 GHz base clock and a 4.0 turbo clock. It has 16 megabytes of L3 cache, a 95 watt TDP, and I will be using the Wraith Spire cooler. I paired the Ryzen 7 with a non-reference GTX 1060 of the 6 GB flavor, simply because that is the fastest video card that I have on my hands at the moment. Upgrading the computer was very simple. It's as easy as uninstalling the current CPU and then installing the new Ryzen 7 in its place. Installing the video card was also very simple. I just had to make sure that I removed the I/O brackets from the PCIe area, and then I installed the GTX 1060 into the PCIe slot, plugged in the 6-pin power, and I was ready to go. And here is the final build now that I have installed the new video card and the new CPU. Please excuse the cable management. I know it's pretty bad, but I just didn't really spend time to make this look pretty. Didn't have the most time to do this. I did it in between classes, so hopefully this is okay for you guys. Everything booted up just fine on the first try, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the build is safe and reliable. Remember, I am using a $450 flagship CPU with a $30 power supply and a $50 motherboard. I'm gonna have to do some stress testing here. All right guys, so here we are testing the brand new $260 APU build with the Ryzen 7 1800X and the GTX 1060. Now, I'm going to be testing a few games, and the very first one I'm testing is Overwatch, and I'm playing it at the Ultra Graphics Settings preset with a 300 FPS frame cap. Right here, the leftwards most temperature reading, that is the CPU temperature, so it's about 52 degrees Celsius, and then to the right of that is the GPU temperature, which is 54 degrees Celsius, excuse me. So with that being said, let's play it and see how big of a difference it is. And I can tell you right now, it's going to be a really big difference. Sweet, so we're finally in the game, and as you can see, there's already a very noticeable difference. I'm at 135-ish to 140 FPS in the opening scene, and I'm imagining that it's probably going to stay above 100 FPS in larger scale team fights as well. But let's see. So as you can see, even in larger team fights, we are still able to maintain like 140-ish FPS, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a noticeable difference from the APU build that we had earlier, where the performance wasn't that great, at least compared to what we're getting right now. And the power draw is at around 220 watts right now, which is easily what the 450 watt power supply that we have can power. So So far, there's nothing to really worry about. Alright, so after Overwatch, I am now testing Battlefield 1, and usually when I benchmark Battlefield 1, I only benchmark the single player part of it, but I anticipate that a lot of you will be playing Battlefield 1, the multiplayer version, specifically 64 player maps, and so that's what I'm testing here. So right now, already auto to pretty much everything Ultra. DirectX 12 is disabled, and I'm going to turn off the frame rate limiter. And that's the advanced part, and then for the basic part, I'm going to make all of the depth of fields at the very max. So let us begin. So right now I'm hovering around 60 to 70 FPS, and although it's lower than I expected, it's definitely more playable than the AP version of this build that I tried out a couple of days ago. Power consumption is bouncing around 230 watts, similar to how it was in Overwatch. So it looks like 230 to maybe 250 max is what you will be seeing with a build such as this one in gaming. And I suck. And lastly, we have PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Now, when I had the APU machine, this game was able to run around 30, maybe 40 FPS at 720p on very low settings with a 70% render scale. Now, this game already auto to anywhere between very low to ultra settings, with the very low being on effects and ultra being on view distance, anti-aliasing, stuff like that, and then medium to high spread out throughout the shadows and some of the textures. Alright, so I already landed and everything was going very, very smoothly, and I can only imagine that it's going to stay this way considering I'm using the flagship CPU from AMD's Ryzen lineup. So it's probably going to stay around where it is right now, which is anywhere between 80 to 100 FPS. So everything's running great. The CPU isn't very hot, and the GPU is way under what it needs to be in order to operate safely. And the power draw is around 220 watts yet again. So it looks like while gaming, this computer probably won't pull any more than about 250 watts, but this is only over the span of 3 games. So could be a little bit different, and your mileage will always vary. I also stress tested the computer with Prime 95 for about 3 hours, as that was the time that I was away from my room for classes. And this is the metrics that I got. The total system power consumption at its very peak was 267 watts. The R7 1800X peaked at about 94 degrees Celsius without the 20 degrees offset, so with some simple math, that's 74 degrees if you account for that offset. The GPU reached about 79 degrees Celsius. And lastly, the peak motherboard temperature when doing the Prime 95 stress test was 59 degrees Celsius. So what have I learned from all of this? Well, first things first, I learned that you can definitely use a flagship Ryzen CPU on an A320 chipset motherboard. That's not an issue. The CPU was under safe operating temperatures, as was the GPU and was the motherboard, which is probably the most important part of that equation. I also learned that computer components are becoming increasingly efficient. An 8-core 16-threaded computer with a GTX 1060 and 8 gigs of RAM did not pull more than 270 watts from the wall, which is absolutely insane. 5 years ago, that would be unheard of, and now that's a very plausible reality. Now, I'm not surprised at all that the 450 watt power supply didn't blow up, because I know a lot of people were expecting that. That usually happens over continual time when the power supply and its capacitors, they just start to wear down a lot quicker, and then finally one of them pops. So I'm not completely sold on the idea that this 450 watt power supply is good enough for a Ryzen 7, a flagship Ryzen 7, and for a higher mid-range GPU and 8 gigs of RAM, but it definitely should be good enough for short-term usage. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it useful, and I hope you realize that you do have the opportunity to upgrade to something better, even if you do come from a cheaper system. And what's better to showcase that fact than use the flagship Ryzen CPU. Thanks again for watching, guys, and if you watched through the advertisement, then leave a winky face in one of your comments below. I just kind of want to get a sense of who actually watches ads and who doesn't, and who stays to the end of my videos. Be a pretty cool way to test. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.